Good morning, everyone. My name is Hamidi Zouina and I am from Algeria. Today, with my colleague Dr. Lawan Hassan Adamu, we are presenting the Team F, which is in the negative side of the topic. Should ancestry testing companies be allowed to operate freely in African countries, or they should be regulated due to ethical and cultural concerns? As you know, in Africa, genetic data is not just personal information. It's identity, heritage, culture, and scientific future. Allowing foreign ancestry to operate freely in African countries and enter without strong regulation exposes African population to exploitation and misrepresentation, and also the loss of control over their genomic resources. Today, I will show you that we are not against science, but we believe in a responsible African-led genomic governance. First, as we know, Africa's DNA is extremely valuable, culturally and economically, of course. Yet, unregulated companies have historically exploited African genetic samples, misrepresented ethnic groups, and sold data to third parties without consent. Our position is clear and simple. Regulation is protection and not prohibition. We support innovation, diaspora connection, and scientific progress, but only under African control. Now that our position is clear, let me explain why regulation is not a barrier but a necessary safeguard. African DNA is more than data. It's a collective heritage. In this case, regulation does not stop innovation and does not stop diaspora connection. But in the same time, it simply ensures accountability and ethical data handling and local governance of African genetic resources. In other words, we welcome science, but only with the strong rules, because without them, the risks far outweigh the potential benefits. And to support this, let's begin with our first constructive argument, which is about genetic exploitation. As you know, African DNA is a valuable resource, and Mail and Guardian in 2020 clearly showed clear risks about African DNA exported to foreign labs provides a flow overseas and not to African communities, and data is stored in foreign databases where Africa has zero control. If Africa loses control of its genomic future today, it loses it permanently, unfortunately. Genomic resources are like minerals, but worse, once exported, DNA can never be recovered. And if exploitation is one concern, privacy is another. That takes us to our second constructive argument, which is about community privacy. In Africa, identity is not individual. It is shared between families, clan, lineage, and ethnic groups. And one person's data reveals information of entire community and about hundreds of relatives who never consented. In this case, individual consent doesn't mean community consent or collective consent. Thus, the freedom to know your ancestry must not override the privacy and dignity of entire communities. Privacy, in fact, is not the only issue. Accuracy is also a major limitation. Let's look at these constructive arguments. We all know that African populations are the most genetically diverse on Earth. Yet Africa is also the most understudied. Imagine only 2% of global genome sequencing data comes from Africa. The consequences for that is ancestry results are often false or misleading. People receive incorrect ethnic labels, and cultural identities become reduced to genetic percentages. Regulation is required to make sure ancestry results are accurate, scientifically valid, and culturally respectful. Now, let's move to the fourth argument, which highlights how regulation can actually enable benefits and not block them. In our constructive argument 4, BMC Medical Genomics highlights that unregulated genomics exposes Africa to unacceptable risks. Actually, we are not rejecting the benefits. With regulation, Africa can still enjoy diaspora connection, high-quality research, job creation, and stronger biobanks. But regulation ensures at the same time data stays in Africa, profits are shared freely, and African researchers gain leadership. Without regulation, benefits go north and risks stay south. Now, having presented our constructive arguments, let's address the main points from the opposing side in the section of rebuttal. The affirmative team, yes. In fact, ancestry tests can give personal identity insights, but DNA is relational. It reveals information about relatives and tribes. This can create misunderstanding or even social conflict when results contradict cultural identity. Regarding healthcare, medical benefits become exploitation if companies operate without ethical safeguards, legal protection, and governance frameworks. So, health benefits remain hypothetical while privacy risks are real. Now, let's address their scientific development arguments. Affirmative team say technology will grow, but the reality is Africa data is sent abroad, analyzed abroad, and stored abroad. African scientists are excluded from leadership and reduced to simple collectors. Capacity building requires local labs, local analysis, and local control, not foreign companies running the entire ecosystem. Education alone is not empowerment without sovereignty. And now let's consider the economic arguments. In fact, yes, ancestry testing can generate economic activity, but the jobs created are most low level. The high-profile sectors, data science, IE models, pharmaceutical application remain abroad. As for data sovereignty, you cannot claim sovereignty if your data is stored in foreign servers or databases outside African countries. DNA is not like oil. If it leaves Africa once, it's gone forever. And this brings us to our final statement. And to conclude, the affirmative arguments describe potential benefits, but all of them require strong regulation to be safe, fair, and sustainable. Without regulation, Africa faces privacy violation, exploitation of genomic resources, inaccurate ancestry reports, and permanent loss of control over its biological heritage. So our stance is clear. Ancestry testing companies must be regulated before operating in Africa, not to block science, but to ensure ethical governance, community protection, and Africa leadership in genetics. And this brings us to our final and latest question. Are we protecting heritage or risking exploitation? Thank you.